Hello everyone, my name is Dan Goodwin. I am an independent UX consultant and I'm going to talk through some UX things now. I struggled a little bit with the title of the session. I had a conversation with Tony who said you just need a one-liner to describe your session. So I gave him that. It's 2 sentences, but it sort of is one line, I think. And that's kind of what I was aiming for. And anyone who's ever written content and then had a designer come back to them might relate to this experience. Yeah, I had to tweak the one-liner to fit the design. So that's what we ended up with, user and customer experiences. What can you do to improve today? So what I was trying to kind of angle at is something like, why isn't Cornwall doing more user experience design? I really wanted to do more user experience design. So these were kind of titles that I was playing around with. And then I thought, or maybe it's like, where are the UXs at? That would fit in. But then I thought, oh, well, this is Cornwall, so I guess it'd have to be, where are the UXs too? And then I just went back to what I was actually trying to do. This is what I want everyone in Cornwall to be thinking about user and customer experiences all the time. And I'm going to try and talk a little bit about why. And I'll try and talk about some things that everyone can do today to help think about user and customer experiences. So I've been presenting on UX at various Software Cornwall events for quite a while now. This is quite an adventurous one where I got everyone to have a conversation with me, reading off cue cards. It was quite experimental. It kind of worked, it kind of didn't. A bit later on, sort of a year later, I channeled Little Mix and Stormzy to try and convince everyone to do more prototyping. So there's kind of a theme to the approach that I tend to take for my talks. This time last year, I actually gave up talking about UX altogether, and I just talked about collaborative design processes and generalist teams, which is something I'm really keen on. So I've been trying to push UX for quite a while, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And over the past kind of 5 years, as Cornwall's dev and tech scene has really taken off and its design team has taken off, it feels like it's really getting the hang of doing amazing agile product and service development. There's some really good teams out there doing exciting work. And we're even seeing kind of lean approaches, and we're seeing some kind of lean and agile marketing approaches coming into Cornwall as well, which is really, really exciting. It's an approach which I think is going to work and going to make a big difference to people doing marketing activities. And what I really want to do is kind of support those really exciting approaches to product and service development with some UX activity. I'm not going to talk too much about the MUM test book, which is an amazing philosophy about how you can talk to your customers and your users and ask the right questions, but with a horrendous sexist title to the book. But I am going to talk a little bit about lean UX, just because it's quite a nice philosophy to talk about and to think about as an approach to bringing user experience to your product and service development where perhaps otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. So I'm going to just quickly talk through some kind of basics of lean UX and why it's relevant and why UX generally is important to us. So design thinking is really important for lean UX. Trying to find a definition of design thinking is quite hard. It came out, to the best of my knowledge, from some really smart people at an design agency called IDEO. And you can see that it's talking about bringing design sensibility, matching that with people's needs and what's technically possible, and bringing all those things together to create something that's going to convert into value and to market opportunity. So it's using that design sensibility, bringing those 3 things together to build value from that opportunity. Lean UX applies the principles of agile development to product design. I'm not going to go through those principles in great depth. I've kind of annotated them myself a little bit. So really, it's all about engaging the entire team from my point of view, in design and things which contribute to the design, and favouring conversations with the team over those processes. So same as with agile processes, by involving the whole team in UX processes and understanding users, you make a big impact. It's all about building working software, or from my point of view, a really good working representation of the software, something that can be tested. So often that's a prototype, and having that built sooner so we can test the viability of our designs. And building those things so that we can test for that market fit, that viability, and a big part of that for me is that usability aspect, and Lean UX helps us with that. And collaborating with our team, using the whole team and collaborating with our customers to understand that problem space. understand the things that our customers are trying to achieve, and reduce heavy documentation and use validated learning. So again, bringing our designs out in front of our users as quickly as we can to validate them, to reduce that dependency on those kind of waterfall-y style processes. And responding to change. So we can always assume that our designs are wrong as a starting point, or that they're not great for our users and our customers. So what we've got to do is find ways to find out what's wrong with them as soon as we can. And once we find out what works and doesn't work, we're going to adjust our designs as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And the other thing is that Lean UX ties in really nicely to Lean Startup. So Lean Startup talks a lot about the build, measure, learn cycle. It's about building the minimum viable product, the smallest possible thing that we can ship and put out to market. And from my point of view, that MVP, that minimum viable product, in order to prove the value of the thing we're designing, again, it doesn't have to be working code. It can be a representation of our code. It can be a prototype. It can be some sketches that we can put in front of users and get them to test. So it's about finding ways to use that approximation. So that tells us that UX is a great thing to be doing if you're designing products or services, because we can bring users into that process and we can design the best experience that's going to best match the needs of those users and customers. Throughout this, it's always difficult talking about user experience design. Actually, I prefer to talk about customer experience design and even people experience design. Users is kind of a narrow term. But so where I'm talking about users, I tend to be talking about users and customers. So user experience design is definitely a really good idea. And probably the strongest, best way to do that is to build some understanding of those people. So if we're going to build understanding of those people, that means that we're going to design the best experience for those people. So we're going to understand their journeys, their problems, their goals, their situation, and that helps us to design the best experience for them. And lean UX activity and lightweight UX activity means that we can do that. We can build that understanding with users. We can use that understanding in our design processes and do it in a lightweight, affordable way. We don't have to have huge research phases up front. We can use what we assume, use what we learn about our users throughout that product and service design cycle, and make a massive improvement to the quality of the things that we make. Just to try and give it a little bit of context, so when I talk about users, it always feels a bit abstract. So I think I'm always really pleased to talk about the kind of different people that I've helped organisations to understand. So the kind of people that I've talked to and gone out and researched and helped the organisations to understand. And it's really broad. So I've looked at people in kind of culture and heritage organisations, people visiting the theatre, museum visitors. I've worked for a hospice in Bath. So I've ended up interviewing people who are caring for people with a life-limiting illness and understanding the situation that they're in, which is, it's fascinating, it's quite hard work and very valuable and really useful to spend time understanding those people. Sometimes it's really technical, so I've ended up working, understanding the international development finance world, so talking to policymakers who are funding international development, but also talking to advocates, people who are trying to get some of that international development finance, and understanding their worlds, what are their challenges, what are their problems. Students of all kinds, and the different students that I talk to have all got very different sets of concerns and problems. I worked in a higher and further education environment, and the needs that those further education students, people coming into further education who are choosing where to go beyond GCSE, they're really involved, they're really difficult. They're taking their GCSEs, but they're also making decisions about where they're going to go beyond that. So they're in a really complicated situation. I'm right in the middle of talking to some people who are defined as hard to reach, remote lone workers. It's quite challenging actually getting hold of these people. But they've got a different set of challenges of their own. How do they stay in touch with the organisations that they work for? How do they stay feeling part of a team? So all of those people that I've researched, that's made a massive difference to the organisations that I've worked for, kind of understanding the needs of those people in great depth. But I think it's also important to think about some other people. I was working with an agency and we did an exercise where we talked about who are the users of that agency. And we were actually looking at the fact that our colleagues our users, the way we interact with people. So we're kind of talking about more cultural side of things for an organisation. Employees and prospective employees, they're users of an organisation. How do we meet their needs? How do we communicate with them? And clients and suppliers. So by thinking holistically about all the different types of users that your organisation has, you can, again, make a change to the culture, make a change to the way you operate, make a change to the way that you communicate with people. So I just wanted to give a kind of sense of the fact that users is a broad church, and that taking time to understand the needs of your own users makes a huge difference. So let's just quickly go back to the kind of title that I had in mind. So I'll talk about why and some things that you can do today. So why? Really, by putting users at the centre of your design process means that your thing, and by a thing I'm talking about the product or the service that you're delivering, or the chunk of design, perhaps a specific feature. By putting users at the centre of that design process means that you're going to better meet the needs of those users. And equally, putting users at the centre of your marketing activity is going to mean that your marketing activity will be more effective with those users. And in this case, I'm talking about customers and users again. And that's going to mean, overall, a more successful product and a more successful service, a more successful thing that you're working on. So what could you do to improve today? Probably the simplest thing is to sit down and have a really good think about your users. Actually sit down and think about who they are. Think about what they're trying to achieve. If you've been out and interviewed and, well, if you've been out and had conversations with them, then you can visualise those people. You can think about the conversations you've had with them and start to extract some of the things that you've learned about the context, the things that those people are trying to achieve. And then go and talk to your users, talk to your customers, and ask the right questions. So that mum test book that I was referring to, that's about helping you ask the right questions. So you don't want to go out and ask them, we're designing this product to do this, would you use it? The answer's probably going to be yes, and you haven't really learned that much. What you want to do in terms of understanding your users and your customers is talk to them about what they're doing, what their problems are. So they own the thing that you're designing for, you own the thing that you're designing to help them. So get them to talk about what they know, get them to talk about themselves and their challenges and their journeys. You can create prototypes, and prototypes don't have to be codey, they don't have to be complex, you don't have to use specialist tools. You can use sketches, you can use bits of paper, you can use things like PowerPoint to create prototypes. If you can present something that represents your design, your product, and get it in front of people and get them talking about it and using it, then you're going to learn a lot before you go further into the processes of designing and building it out. And then the things that you've learned, you've understood, the things that you've assumed, the conversations that you've had with those customers, keep using those things that you've learned, the insights, the nuggets of information that you've learned about those users as part of that continuous build, measure, learn, iterative process that you're going to do. You're going to keep learning about users, you're going to keep applying what you've learned, and then you're going to measure the success, whether that's through quantitative research in terms of measuring how many people work their way through a pipeline or work their way through a completion process, or whether it's qualitative, actually sitting users down in front of your thing and watching them using it. So both of those things are going to feed into that onward iterative process. And get the whole team involved, get everyone in your design team, get everyone in your product team, get everyone in your organisation understanding and thinking about those users and understanding why you're making these decisions. And that will help them to keep thinking back to those users too. But, and here comes the sort of pitch bit, you could do this even more powerfully and even better if you hire a user researcher to help you by sticking up the right post-it notes on the wall. You could get them to help you get the most out of your user research. So this is me doing some user research, doing some interviews. I'm working on themes around the interviews, the conversations that we had, structuring those conversations, those interviews in a way that gathers the most insights, the most powerful things. And then how we present this thing in terms of, in this case, the structure for a website, and capturing the insights that we've learned and using that to inform our structure. And using things like personas and user journeys to present the things that we've learnt about groups of users in an understandable and digestible way so the whole team can keep looking at those things, keep remembering the people that they're designing for. And get a professional user researcher, UX designer to help you to create those best prototypes and learn some of the techniques that you can use. And as I say, it doesn't have to be code, it could be paper. This is people building a paper prototype in Launchpad just up the road, as it happens. And building a paper prototype really helps you to explore in the early stages some of your ideas and work out whether they're practical and feasible. There's so many different ways. This is kind of simple, clickable wireframe prototypes. This is an alpha of a public sector site, which is a prototype which can be tested, obviously usability tested with users. This is an HTML prototype, testing out the structure of a broad and deep content site. So bringing in an expert can help you build those prototypes in a really good way and learn the most from them. So I'm on this kind of mission to build more better UX in Cornwall, and to do that I want to work with all of these people, because I think all of these people can benefit from thinking about, learning about, understanding about and designing for their users. And it's not just products and services, also people think about organisational culture. So understanding the people who work for you, work with you, who would like to work with you, that can help you to think about that organisational culture that people would like to build. Things like Epic, where there are opportunities to partner and pilot ideas, where again bringing users into that process is going to make a massive difference to the quality of those pilots. If we can usability test some of the early stage ideas, we'll learn quickly and at good value, we'll get good value learning from those activities. And if anyone's on a UX journey of their own, thinking about moving into this field, I'd love to help them out too. And also, from kind of a selfish reason, LinkedIn's emails about product recruitment are terrible at the best of times, but this is one that arrived this week and every single one was in London, which is kind of disappointing. I'd like some of those things to be down here in the southwest. I'd like some really good UX roles to be down here in the southwest. Should have put a title on there. Okay, that's me. I'd love to chat to anyone. My contact details are there. I'd love to talk more about what you're up to and what you're doing. Thanks very much.